Go ahead and start the recording. Thank you, sir. What I want everybody to do, just because of the interest of time, if you wouldn't mind just putting your name in the chat, your village, it'll help our guest speaker, who is very known. I'll introduce her in a minute, to V2V. So we know, have a sense of where, everybody is. And then I think if that's all right with you, Kim, we'll hold questions until the end. Or do you want to?
I'm much more of an interactive type person, so I was planning on taking questions the whole way through.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Kim Grier. She is our former board president. But she stepped down back in January, February of last year, maybe March, and took on the role as a project manager for V2V. And she oversees our two big grants that we got, one from NCOA and one from US Aging, and with the vaccine initiative. So she's done a huge job. But what people don't know is that her background is in dementia. She has years. I'm going to let her tell you. Oh, I'm not even going to read her bio. I'm just going to let her tell you who she is and what she does and how she does it. And it's actually a very hot topic right now with a lot of folks. So I'm going to let you take it away, Kim.
Great. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Some of you I've met before, so hello again. Greetings from Asheville, North Carolina, where we've had 37 seconds of snow in the past week. So, winter's coming. As Barbara said, I have basically my entire career has been in long-term care, and especially working with people with living with dementia and families as well. I've worked for different Alzheimer's associations, doing program management, family caregiver issues, professional training, staff training, all that kind of good stuff. So, it's interesting that I've been in long-term care, the field, for about 35 years now. And in terms of long-term care and dementia care, what I've seen in the past 35 years has changed this much. So thankfully, in the past few years, things seem to be getting a lot more steam, and a lot more attention is getting paid to people living with dementia. It's a huge, huge issue. And, a lot of times people don't get the information that they need to be able to help take care of somebody, because all of a sudden they realize, holy cow, I'm right in the middle of taking care of somebody. So they don't get the information that they need. And so anyway, this is just sort of an intro. I especially want to hear from you. You can unmute at any time. You can write a question into the chat. I may not be quite as good as seeing the ones in the chat, but if you want to put your hand up, if you want to wave, any of that kind of good stuff, please jump in at any time. And before we get started, and I've got a PowerPoint, it's about 5 or 6 slides. I'm much more interested in finding out what you want to know and what you want to get out of this session. So if anybody, before I even get started, if you have any particular interest of questions that you have or things you'd like to get addressed, is there any burning questions that any of y'all have right now that you would like to hear about? Betty Ann.
Hi, I have a brother who's 2 years older than me, who was just diagnosed, I guess, maybe a year ago with Alzheimer's. And now he's moved into a continuing care facility, but he's still in assisted living with his wife. But I feel like nobody's doing anything about it. Everyone just sort of said, oh, that's what he has. So I'm pretty confused about why they say it's Alzheimer's as opposed to dementia, and if there's anything you can do.
Okay, so anything in terms of medical, social? Oh, yep, Barbara.
I was just going to say, Kim, it would be help to really say the definitions of what each of the mild cognitive, dementia, Alzheimer's, the terms, what we're all dealing with.
I've got a slide for that.
Okay, there you go.
So yes, definitely can talk about that. What else would you like to know? Steve?
It's actually Kathy. That's my husband's name that shows up there. I teach a class in caring for people living with dementia. And one question that comes up all the time that I would really like to have a lot more information on is finances. What kind of finances are available for people, you know, having to go through this for long periods of time? Just what kind of resources you have along those lines would be really helpful.
So financial assistance. What state are you in?
Washington State.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, that might be something that comes near the end when we go through a few different things. And if you ask something and I don't get to it, we can do this again. You can call me. I've got my information on the slides. Great. Thank you, Steve, Kathy. Anybody else?
Yeah, there was a question in the chat from Terry about what do you recommend villages support who living with dementia?
Okay, so I'm not going to answer that question for you. We're going to come back to that at the end of this, at the end of the presentation, and see what information you've got from the presentation that would translate to helping your members living with dementia. So we'll circle back to that. Oh, I hate that phrase. We will come back to that question at the end. And I think that's a good sort of way to wrap things up, because that's what we're here to do, is to help the folks that we serve. So to help. So don't let me forget that. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. And again, if I don't notice that you're asking a question, just go ahead and interrupt me. I am perfectly fine with that. Slideshow. All right. All about dementia. It's basic. Whoops. That's basically it. So what we are going to cover today is, next slide. So these are the discussion topics I put down. I think it's close to what you are interested in. I'm going to talk about the definition of dementia, the symptoms of dementia, how dementia affects the brain. We'll just kind of scoot through that because I'll get to it. How dementia affects the person connecting with the surroundings. You know, dementia is not just memory loss, it's a lot of everything. And so the person changes how they interact with the world around them. And we're the ones that have to adapt to that to figure out, how can I support this person in a way that is dignified, respectful, and they can understand. And then there's the end. What can you do to help? I think that's, again, sort of why we're here. Okay, here's the fun thing. Dementia is not a disease. So, and you can get these slides afterwards. So if you don't want to write everything down, and let me just get the chat up here. There we go. I've got the chat up. Okay, so dementia is not a disease. Dementia is a word that describes a set of symptoms. So dementia means a person is having trouble with some cognitive decline. So dementia itself, this is an important thing to help your village members. Here's something right here. If somebody is diagnosed with dementia, the very next question out of your mouth should be, what's causing the dementia? Because dementia is not a disease, it's used to describe a set of terms and disorders. So there's over 100 different medical conditions that can cause dementia. So it's imperative to find out what's causing the dementia. So here's a good little side-by-side of why it actually might. So think of it this way. Dementia, not a disease. Headache, not a disease. Dementia tells you that the person is having trouble with thinking, remembering, figuring stuff out, finding their way. So dementia tells you that there's these types of problems going on. Just like a headache. If somebody says, I have a headache, usually your next question is, oh, that's too bad. Do you have migraines? What's causing it? So a headache tells you that my head is aching. Dementia tells you that I'm having trouble with my memory and cognitive and processes. The reason why it's really important to find out what is causing the dementia is that different causes have different treatments. So just like for a headache, if your headache's caused by tension and stress instead of a head injury, the treatment for that is going to be totally different. If your headache's caused by a migraine as opposed to high blood pressure, those are two completely different treatments. So just saying to a physician, I have a headache, is just like the physician saying to you, you have dementia. Great, but what is causing the dementia? There's a few types of dementia. There's a few causes of dementia that can be reversed, and things like medication side effects can cause dementia. So if you're taking 2 or 3 different medications and then you're going to see another physician and they prescribe something else, but they're not checking with how it interacts with anything else, and then you start to take an over-counter Benadryl, and sometimes that combination of medications that you're taking can cause you to be fuzzy and confused and not quite in touch with the world. So those medication side effects are causing dementia. So you deal with the medication side effects, and it should deal with the memory problems and fix that. Thyroid problems can cause a person to have dementia. Especially for the older population, especially for those living in care communities, dehydration is huge. If you get really dehydrated, you can have symptoms of dementia. You will be confused and disoriented. That dehydration is causing dementia. Alzheimer's disease causes dementia. So just like a medication side effect can cause dementia, so can Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease affects brain cells. I'm not going to get into the whole nitty-gritty of that unless you want to. And Alzheimer's disease causes dementia because brain cells and brain connections are starting to die, and the brain functions aren't working like they used to work, and messages just are not getting around. A stroke can cause somebody to have dementia. And I put Lewy body dementia. There's several different types of the irreversible ones. There's frontotemporal lobe dementia, which I think is what Bruce Willis has right now. Lewy body dementia is what Robin Williams had. And it's just different diseases that cause dementia. So Lewy body is just different deposits in the brain, and that causes the messages to get disrupted. So a person's going to have memory loss, confusion, and disorientation. Vanessa.
Sorry. So we've also learned that UTIs can cause dementia or a form of dementia, as do obviously things like chemo brain, which is a joke, but it is real. And people are saying long COVID also sometimes causes cognitive issues.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that cause, that's a great way of saying it. There's a lot of things that cause cognitive issues. Alzheimer's disease is not the only one that causes cognitive issues. And you're right, I should put UTI on here. A urinary tract infection in an older adult, you can go from being, or, anyone of compromised health, you can go from being perfectly fine like you and me to absolutely confused and have no idea what's going on, and within hours because of a urinary tract infection. So that's a great.
We found at our village that if people are starting to say things that, gee, my partner or my whoever, they're not remembering things. One of the first questions we begin to say now is it a UTI? Does the person have a UTI? Because we've seen it so often.
Right. And that actually, I didn't put a slide in here about this. I didn't put in something to talk about how you end up diagnosing what's causing the dementia. And it's basically, you start to go through a list of exclusion. Is it medication side effects? Is it a UTI? Is this person dehydrated? Are they having TIAs, the transischemic little strokes? And you start to rule out stuff. And so absolutely, you've got to start somewhere. Vascular dementia, that's definitely one that's caused by mini strokes or and then Barbara says also dementia due to radiation and chemo treatments. So yeah, a lot of different things can cause dementia. Sometimes you can reverse it, sometimes you can't. And with Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, vascular, that sort of thing, it's not reversible. Somebody had their hand up and they popped off the screen again, and you had long
Yeah,
hair.
that was
There you
me.
are.
But you just answered the question, like if somebody has a UTI and then they cure it, or it gets dealt with, does that change that? Then they won't have dementia anymore, or is
If that's what was causing their
Yeah.
dementia. So if there's nothing else, if the person is absolutely physically healthy, nothing else is going on, and the UTI causes their confusion, if it's treated properly, they should return to what their cognition was before. A person can have Alzheimer's disease that's been undiagnosed, get a UTI, that will be dealt with. The UTI can be dealt with, but they'll still have the underlying Alzheimer's disease starting to move forward. Plus, Vanessa, you made me think of also mentioning that with a UTI, it comes on very quickly. So you'll notice the person is good, good, not bad, good, and then holy moly, they're off the charts. With something like Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, the changes are slow and you don't notice. You're not like all of a sudden, holy moly, this person's off, just making no sense. You start to look at, okay, it's maybe last year that I remember this happening, and then this happened this year, and they forgot their daughter's name, and you start to sort of put together. So some of the dementia causes are immediate, and you see immediate reaction, but then others like Alzheimer's, stroke, Lewy body take a much longer time. And people tend to write it off as, well, they're just getting old. I swear to God, if anybody ever says that to me, I'm going to drop kick them across the room, because there's normal age-related memory loss. We're all living it right now. You forget certain things. Where are my keys? What did I do? I forgot this appointment. Normal age-related memory loss, we all have it. We all think differently than we used to. We all remember differently than we used to, and it's going to change. It's going to be different 5 years from now and 10 years from now. Alzheimer's type forgetting is when is that my next slide? Friend's father was having cognitive changes. Yeah. Lung infection, not enough oxygen to the brain. Yeah. So, sometimes if people are like, hey, by the way, I lost my train of thought. I was trying to do too much at once. I saw Kathy's come up. Excellent. You can help out with this as well then. Yeah, and so, if somebody's having memory problems, and this, Kathy said a friend's father was having cognitive changes, it turned out it was caused by a lung infection, not enough oxygen getting to the brain. So if it's just written off as, people are getting old, it happens, you forget things like this occur all the time. And older adults get sort of, swept under the rug in terms of, yeah, you're old, it's going to happen, as opposed to what's the cause of what's going on. Because again, there's normal age related stuff, and then there's, the not normal age related. Anybody got their hand up? Questions, thoughts, comments? Kathy. Oh.
Well, that just makes me wonder if you notice changes. You don't want to go for an evaluation like probably at the drop of a hat. So if you notice some changes and you think, well, it seems kind of normal for aging, and you go along that way for a while, do you think that makes sense, or do you think you would want to get evaluated quickly, like at the first sign?
And that's a personal decision. And also there's no, with all of this, there's no one way of saying, yep, the moment you notice something, here's what you do. Or when this happens, you do that. A lot of this is, the person best. or another family member might know the person best. The type of forgetting that we're talking about here is not, oh my goodness, I forgot where I put my keys. Holy cow, where's my car in this parking lot? And you walk around beeping your thing that, we all do. The type of forgetting that is going to, that you might want to start to really pay attention to is things that, like you will never forget if you have no other issues going on and you just have normal age-related memory loss, you are never going to forget the name of your child. You're never going to forget the name of your partner. You're not going to forget where you live. You're not going to forget how to tie your shoes. So the Alzheimer's type forgetting starts to get into things that affect a person being able to get through their daily life. It's okay that I don't remember what I had for lunch, but it's not okay that I don't remember my daughter was here for 3 hours. We had lunch together. And I call her that night and say, I haven't seen you for so long. That's different than what did we have for lunch when she was here.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, it's like, there's nothing wrong with going to the doctor and saying, hey, this has been happening. What do you think? And if you're not getting the answers that make you feel comfortable, there's geriatric specialists. Not all areas have them. There's, the Alzheimer's Association where you can get information from, that type of thing. This is, even though this is, caregiving and dementia and Alzheimer's, and there's so much information about it, there's still so much information we don't know. And there's so much personal variability in terms of, maybe my mother's had dementia for 5 years and we're just all ignoring it because none of us want to deal with it because she's the matriarch of the family. There's nothing wrong with that, because how you are living your life and how you are helping other people is so very specific to you and your emotional reserves, financial reserves, all that kind of stuff. Sure, there's a few wrong things you can do, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all doing the best that we can with the information we have at the time. And a lot of times folks will be like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd gotten her diagnosed years ago. It would have made a difference. It's like, maybe not, but you did the best you could. And you did what you knew to do at the time. And so don't dwell on that. I'm getting off on a tangent. So dementia, and I'm just using the overall term dementia now because it's easier than saying Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body, that kind of stuff. This is the not normal part of aging. So dementia is going to affect more than just short-term memory loss or memory loss. And that's, a lot of folks don't realize it's more than just memory. Because Alzheimer's disease and these other dementia-causing irreversible diseases are starting to cause brain damage. So it's not just going to affect the part of the brain that deals with memory, it's going to affect everything that your brain does, which is controlling everything about your body and your person. So you're going to start noticing it's the short-term memory loss first. The person's going to have trouble with thinking and reasoning, sort of going from A to B to end up at C. That's going to start to be a bit of an issue. The person's going to start to have problems with problem solving. Again, what we're starting to get is from short-term memory stuff to more abstract thinking, and thinking that, like if somebody, as simple as if somebody says to me, go get your jacket, and I have Alzheimer's disease. Simple, but I have to abstractly think, what is a jacket? Wait a minute, is this person talking to me? Where is my jacket? What does a jacket mean? Do I have a closet? And by that time, I may be just, there goes the entire thought. And you've asked me simply to get a jacket, and it's just too much for my brain to parse through all of that information. One thing that absolutely changes, and this is where we need more education to be able to be the person who can be the surroundings for this individual, but how a person with dementia communicates in terms of how they talk, how they are pulling their words, what they're saying, and also their nonverbal communication. It also changes how I understand the world around me. So you may be sitting there and I've got a bowl of soup in front of me and I've got my spoon right next to it, and I have Alzheimer's disease and I'm not eating. My soup is there, my spoon is there, and my brain is not saying, that's a spoon, it goes with the soup. Here's how you use the spoon, here's how you eat. So this is changing how I connect with the world around me. You as a caregiver or as a person helping out a caregiver, it's our job to figure out, how can I fill in the missing parts of this person's brain? What's missing in the messages right now that I can help them with in a way that I'm communicating that they understand, such as more nonverbal communication. So again, dementia is going to affect Alzheimer's disease. The other dementias are going to affect everything about how the person is. Eventually, if I have Alzheimer's disease long enough, and I don't even know the exact definition of long enough, it could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's going to start affecting more and more systems of your body. And it's going to start affecting my ability to chew and swallow, and my immune system is going to become weaker because my brain isn't telling my immune system to work properly. So over time, all of these initial things that you start to notice are going to decline over time. Questions about that? Let's see. I've only got a couple more slides, I believe. Yeah, so how communication changes is huge, and how you communicate back to a person living with dementia is easy once you start to pay attention to it. So if I have Alzheimer's disease, I'm going to start having issues with finding the right words in the conversation, following conversations, being able to keep up with what's going on, because my brain's not processing as fast and efficiently as it used to. So if there's a conversation going on, I may be looking at this person trying to figure out what they're saying. It bounces over here, it comes back again. I've missed that part because I'm still focused on this. I'm going to have trouble understanding what is being said, not in terms of I can't hear you, though sometimes that might be the case. It's more, you're saying these things to me, you're using words. The part of my brain that interprets words has been affected. I don't understand what these words mean that you're saying to me. And I'm probably going to be starting to speak less often. If you think about it, as adults, none of us want to look stupid. None of us want to look like we don't know what's going on. So if I can't understand the conversation, I can't follow conversations, I have trouble understanding what's being said, I might just sit back and speak less often, because it's easier for me to uphold my dignity as a person and not get involved, because I know that I don't understand what's happening, and I may start speaking less often. This is just a very small smattering of communication changes, but it's sort of the highlights. And second last slide. So I know I'm throwing a whole lot of information at you quickly, but if there's one thing, well, remember it all, but nonverbal communication is the absolute key as things progress. And even earlier on, and even right now for us as human beings, nonverbal communication is huge. We always pay attention to what we're saying, but when you're around a person with dementia, it's really important to focus on how you're saying it as well. Because if my brain damage starts in a place where it's short-term memory, but then very, very quickly moves on to communication, words, language, understanding, but it doesn't get to my nonverbal understanding place forever. So I'm losing the ability to understand words and use words back again, but I am absolutely still tuned in with your nonverbal communication, and how I'm communicating more is through nonverbal communication as well. So just very briefly, I just put this together as a, how can you help? And I've used this mnemonic before for staff in long-term care facilities, because they're thrown into a situation where they're having to take care of 15 people by lunchtime, get them all out of bed and all this stuff. And it's my third day here and whatever. Some very, very simple things to remember when you're talking with a person with dementia. And the reason why I'm finishing with this is communication is key to building relationships. If you can't communicate, you cannot build a relationship. And if you don't have a relationship, you cannot help the person you want to help. David has a question. David?
He's muted.
Thank you. I would like to ask this, please. If I deal with a person who is not a family member, not somebody I'm intimate with, how should I behave with that person when I know there's something wrong? Should I act normally? Or is there more that I could do to be helpful to that person, recognizing that he or she has an issue, and I just want to continue to have a relationship, even though he or she has an issue? What can I do to be supportive?
My first thought is absolutely just go on being with this person the way you are with this person now, with the caveat of I'm always a fan of open communication, and I don't know if the relationship you have with this person, it could be. I've noticed that you might need a little more help every now and then. Is that okay if I'm here to help you out with that? Sometimes that might help, sometimes not. The thing about helping somebody who either doesn't want help, says they don't need help, or needs help, but because of their dementia doesn't understand it, one of the things to do is just basically be there. You are a friend, you are like, hello, whatever your relationship is. I'm having trouble answering this just because there's probably a whole lot more nuances to this. But I would say, a lot of who we are as people is we just want to help other people. And would it be helpful to go to this person and say, there's something wrong, you need to get it figured out, I don't know what's happening, see you in a bit? Or is it more helpful to just continue the relationship you have now, being supportive in terms of guiding the person a bit more? Like, there's ways of talking where it's like, if I have this last jar of lemonade and I want it for myself, I'm not going to say to you, do you want this? I'm going to say, you don't want this, do you? And I'm saying the same thing. I'm including the person in a conversation, but I'm helping guide toward something that I think is helpful. If that makes any sense. It's tough. It's tough because you want to help.
Thank you.
But then there's also self-determination. So if everyone has the right to a self-determined life, then where do I step in? Is it my position to step in? Is there somebody else who can help out? Is there somebody else you can talk to who's a friend of this person as well, who might notice what's going on? Just some ideas.
Thank you.
Again, just going to finish quickly with this. I did this mnemonic, I can help. Because again, to me, it's all about communication and relationships. So you're the one who can make this a good interaction. You have the control here because you are the one who's cognitively intact, for whatever that means. Calm, slow down. You'll notice I talk very fast, but I make a conscious effort that when I go to talk to somebody with dementia, I slow down just a bit. So I've slowed down just a bit now. I haven't slowed down a whole lot to make it sound like I'm talking to a child who doesn't understand. I just calm down and slow down, and you can feel the sort of frenetic coming down. If I'm a person who picks up on nonverbal communication, I'm picking up on, oh, nice and calm and things are good. You arms open, huge, helpful, welcoming gesture. You're not standing there like this. Nonverbal communication says, hey. I often walk through a nursing home dementia care unit with one arm as I walk up to people with one arm out like this and nodding and saying hello, just because it's non-threatening and it's something that the person might understand. You use the person's name, you say hello, eye contact. Again, this is the nonverbal stuff. I can be talking away to you, and you might not have even known that I'm the one who's talking to you because there's a TV on over here and your grandchildren are running through the room over here. If I take the extra 3 or 4 seconds to get eye contact and just say, hey, Mrs. Jenkins, how are you? You lead the conversation. And, you know, if the person, and this is the thing too, is it's okay for the person to be wrong, but for us to take the weight. So if somebody is, you know, comes to the door and you're taking them out for lunch and it's -5 outside and they're wearing, you know, a summer shawl, leading the conversation and being positive. The non-positive way is, oh my God, what are you wearing? It's freezing out here. Go get something else. I can't believe you're wearing that. The positive, and so anyway, the positive way would be, wow, that's a beautiful shawl. I wonder if we can also get something else to cover you as we go out, you know, and so you're praising the person, even though they're wrong. You're not going to tell them they're wrong because this is what my brain is telling me is right. So that is just a short little thing I use for that. And I believe that is all she wrote. I will stop screen sharing. Betty Ann.
One thing that's hard with my brother who has Alzheimer's, he's in Boston and my sister and I are on the West Coast. So the first challenge is he calls us at 6:30 in the morning or 6 in the morning all the time, and he forgets the time change. And he's getting confused about how to use his phone. And it somehow doesn't coordinate very well with his hearing aids, but it's hard to use nonverbal communication when you're not there.
Very good
It's a
point.
challenge, but we talk to him almost every day and we do have a good time.
Yeah. Well, and that's wonderful. And I'm sorry he wakes you up at 6:30 in the morning. Nonverbal communication also includes a lot to do with your voice. And
Okay.
so the tone that you use, the pitch that you use, how fast you talk, how slow you talk, a lot of that as well has to do with nonverbal communication. But it sounds like you're still having lovely conversations with him.
We are.
Financial assistance, you know, it's really state specific. Unfortunately, there's some states that have self-directed programs where a person can be paid to be a caregiver to their family member. Medicare does not pay for a nursing home long-term. Medicare will pay for 100 days. That's a whole other webinar. Medicaid is available for long-term care, residential-based nursing home, but there is still, I'm sure, rampant Medicaid discrimination in terms of admitting people into a nursing home. And so it's really tough. There is not a lot available out there for caregivers.
Kim, can I interject one?
Yep.
So one of the things that villages can do is check out the local facilities, whether they are state, county, city-run adult day centers, nonprofits that specialize, you know, individual foundations. A lot of states, like in New Jersey, there's a couple of state grants that allow individual nonprofits to have respite caregiver go in and stay for a couple hours a week. And so it's really, it does require digging a little bit, but, you know, a lot of the adult days are sliding scale also. So, you know, you have to look and see if that's a good, it's not so much the facility itself, it's the transportation to and from, which is always a little bit more tricky. But I just thought I'd point that out. And then for those of you, I mean, I just went through this personally. So my husband was on palliative care, and that opened up a lot of other things that Medicare will cover. And then, of course, hospice opens up you know, a lot more as far as coverage, with, and as Kim said, state to state, you know, when in Virginia, forget it. It was just so limited, and we didn't, I knocked my head against the wall. Here in New Jersey, it's a very different story with their Medicare rules. So really getting somebody who really understands the nuances of each of the state, you know, your individual state and your circumstance, and digging deep to see what your entitlement benefits are. That's the best part.
Okay.
If you've got a, yeah. I'm going to answer Kathy's question in the chat, and then I'm going to go back to the what can villages do to help. So, how would you bring up a concern about memory, confusion, communication to someone you are very close to? Me personally, and you know, it's easier for me because I've worked in long-term care forever and I've been around this. I would say I would sit down with the person quietly and just say, I'm really concerned about things that are going on, and here's specifically what I've noticed. Do you want to do something about it? Can I help you do something about it? Or do you just want to leave this alone and forget about it? Because that's personally what I would do. You know the person best. And if they are good with something like that, go for it. If they're not good with something like that, and you're comfortable with talking with other family members who are close to them as well, who they might listen to a bit better, because sometimes there's a different family member that is sort of the golden child, and not all of us are the golden children. And so sometimes asking somebody else to help might be, but I'm a fan of open communication and, you know, asking the person, what do you want to do about this? Can I help you do something with this? I'm concerned about you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I'm asking you all now, what can villages do to help out not only somebody living with dementia, but the person who might be one of the main caregivers? What do you, after listening to this, do you have any ideas? What do you think caregivers need? And you can just, yep. Kathy,
It's
not
Kathy.
Steve. Yeah.
Our village is offering more and more educational seminars, which are really well attended. We often fill the classes within a couple days and then have a wait list and start the next section. So informational things like what you're going through here. And we've also got classes going in caring for people with dementia, and the kinds of behaviors, communications and engagement sections, and then difficult behaviors, which are really stress related behaviors. We are also training our volunteers. There's a subsection of volunteers who want to provide respite care, and we're doing special training for those who want to do respite care for people living with dementia. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
That is great.
those have been helpful. And the more people, we live in a tiny valley here, and it's the more we figure, the more people we can educate, the more people we can get trained, the less stigma there is around dementia. All of us baby boomers are moving toward it. So there just aren't enough caregivers here. And so we figured the more people we can train to be sensitive to dementia, and learn how to help with it, that kind of thing, the better we all are. So that's what we're doing.
spectacular. Way to go.
Thanks.
Susan and then Bill.
I have a question for Kathy. I am wondering, where is the curriculum coming from? If you built it or you took it from someplace for the classes?
He's muted. I think.
Sorry, yes. We started with the woman who's in charge of our palliative care program, and she put together a baseline structure for our program. I took that over because she got so busy with palliative care. We only have a few nurses available there. So I've taken it over and expanded that program a bit. I've just looked at as many resources as I could, as many websites, a lot of reading, talk to people who are caregiving now and find out what their issues are, what their concerns are, and then try to dig and find as much information as possible. and then rope that into a structure. We do a 4-week course. It's an 8-hour course, once a week, 2 hours. And that seems to be a good pace for people. We have it broken down into 4 sections. One is like this section here where you gave today, Kim, just what is dementia? What are the different kinds? How's it diagnosed? How does it progress? Second section is communication and engagement. Third section is difficult behaviors. And fourth section is, and we try to get this throughout, taking care of self-care for the caregiver and how important it is to get some respite care in there, have some time to give yourself a break. And then also that last section, we do medical documents, legal documents, that kind of thing. So
Can we ask where you're located?
we are in Methow Valley in Eastern Washington. It's Winthrop and Twisp, Carlton, Washington. It's a little valley with 5 little towns. And we've really tried to band together and collaborate with other. We have 1 assisted living facility in the valley that has a capacity of 12 people. So it's,
Oh my.
you know, there's not a lot. There's a whole lot of home care going on here.
That's a group home. That's not a facility.
Yeah, it's a wonderful facility. It's a green model. So it's
Oh, nice.
actually a national model from such a tiny little valley. We're pretty proud of that. But yeah, our hospitals, we have 2 hospitals an hour away. Our main hospital is 2.5 hours, and Seattle is 3.5 hours. So, you know, we're pretty remote. So there's a group called Room 1 that provides social services here, and we collaborate with them. We write for grants with them. We find we get more pull if we collaborate like this and use as many organizations as we have, as many nonprofits. So Jamie's Place, our residential care, Room 1, we have something called the Lookout Coalition, which is retired medical people who have come together, and they go out and do assessments. They keep an eye on people. Methow at Home has a program called Guardian Angels, and we assign their one-on-one with our more at-risk members. And that person checks in, you know, a couple times a week. They visit, they take them out to lunch, you know, just a more personal connection than our regular volunteer program. So it's a pretty cool system. It works. But
when it comes to this particular program and the lessons and the palliative care, is that all provided by volunteers?
no, that's provided by Methow at Home, our organization. And we design the program, we present the program, and then we have a group of 300 volunteers, and many of whom are interested in learning how to be able to help out with people with dementia. The palliative care program is a separate program as well.
Is Methow at Home a village?
Yes.
Thank
That
you.
is, that's all pretty impressive. And this, I was going to mention it later, but the Village to Village Network, and I see everybody's hands up, the Village to Village Network is starting work on putting together a package of training sessions like this that members will be able to access, so that you don't have to go out and find your own, and hopefully have somebody who's as well versed in dementia and things like that. So we will be taking suggestions for what you want to hear, but we're going to start with the basic package of, and if I could put a plug out there for, no, I'll skip that. Okay. I just want to acknowledge everybody who's in line here. We have Bill, Susan, Tom, and Vanessa. So I see you all. So I believe Bill is next.
Vanessa first.
He's
Bill?
muted.
You're muted.
Bill,
Bill, you're
Bill.
muted.
Sorry, talking to myself again. I just wanted to let you all know that I put some information into the chat. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Alzheimer's Association had been working on this topic for a number of years. Over the last 3 or 4 years, they've made a lot of progress in putting together useful information for folks. They're aiming it at local health departments, and they've come up with a something called a Healthy Brain. I don't know if this is going to show up, but it's a little booklet, Healthy Brain Initiative. And it has a lot of the baseline information I think that folks need to know. As we all get older, 10 to 15% of us are going to have problems with dementia. So that's the bad news. The good news is that the pace of developing dementia can be altered by the environment and interactions with individuals that are around them. So there now are some actual treatments for Alzheimer's disease. There are some medications that alter the course. So what I've done is put some information in there about where you can find this Healthy Brain Initiative and the roadmap. And there's a link also to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And the Alzheimer's Association is having a meeting tomorrow, actually, on the Healthy Brain Initiative and kind of the roadmap that they've put together. So I'm sure they'll be doubling back and doing these kind of presentations again. But I think there are resources out there. And since we are all vulnerable to this, and I think it is one of the things that worries people the most. Kim mentioned earlier about, I can't find my keys, I can't find my wallet. We all have those issues, but you always worry, is that the first sign? So I think there are some things people can do to learn more about how to take care of themselves and how to take care of their neighbors. And I think that villages are extremely well positioned to help in providing the kind of services that we're talking about here, support services, respite services. And I think we'll be looking into how we can bring that to everybody in the next year or so. So stay tuned.
Okay, we have Susan, Tom, and then Vanessa. Susan has a comment in. Our village has been told by our insurance company that we cannot accept any members with Alzheimer's dementia without our insurance rates tripling. First of all, has anyone else run into this? If you
No,
haven't,
we had
my
a
first thought-
conversation. We had a conversation with the insurance broker. First of all,
Yeah.
we are a non-medical,
ADA
provider.
violation.
We're not, and so I don't know how they can dictate those rules. I would give serious pushback as
I
far
think
as
it's an ADA. It's clearly an ADA violation because
Right.
you're singling out somebody with a disability.
And not only
So,
that, but how would you know that somebody was diagnosed? Because we all are avoiding HIPAA compliance and putting any type of documentation in our records that somebody has. Let's say somebody has, I don't know, cancer, or you don't put documentation in our record. Or as a former AD, we didn't ask whether or not somebody had Alzheimer's. How do you disclose that as you're walking in the door? I don't know how an insurance company.
In our case, sometimes people just tell us that they just say that.
Right.
We're looking for respite care. My wife has Alzheimer's, and they go on a member intake, conversation.
I would shoot Rob Cannon, who was our guest lecturer last month. He's an insurance broker in Maryland. He has can't think of the name of it. Talk about memory loss. Can't remember his company name, but the webinar is on there and his contact information. Shoot him an email. He's very knowledgeable about this, and I think it's an important aspect. I do agree with Kim. I think it's a violation of ADA. So I don't know.
That's great.
As long
Thank
as
you.
you're
And
not
the
doing,
issue
as long as
is,
you're
I
not-
think, are we treating people with dementia, or are we providing community services for
Right.
people that have dementia? And there's a difference. So I think that distinction is important. And I think if your insurance company does threaten you with that, we'd like to know about it, because we'd like to run that up the chain and make sure that gets nipped in the bud.
And also be very careful. I don't use the word respite. Respite is not a word that villages, I think, should be using. Friendly visitor, somebody who's going to, a companion sit someone. But respite really is, in the medical terms, a person who, or a place that a person goes to that's not at home. Nursing homes offer respite care. Assisted living facilities offer respite. It really encourages the word that you're taking care of this person. And that's not what the intent of villages are doing. They're having a friendly visitor to give that person an hour to go to the grocery store. They're not taking care of the person.
Mhm. Thank you. That's all very helpful.
Great. Tom?
Yes, thank you. Tom from Pooch Cove in Newfoundland in Canada.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm from Ottawa. I'm Canadian too.
I'm very interested in that topic from two perspectives. One, of course, is a personal experience. Both my mom and my dad had dementia before they passed away. But more importantly, we are in the very early stages of exploring and developing the village idea out here. And we're just about to, after the holidays, to start the larger kind of info sessions, reaching out into the community. And why I'm interested in this topic is um, I've already experienced that the people that we reach out to or that we connect with first are the ones that already are sort of burning on the topic of something around the village idea, or that do have the time, or all of that. And where I'm going with this is, do you have any kind of experience how to make sure that you include the vulnerable of a population, in this context, particular people with mental issues, because they will likely not respond to the typical kind of outreach flyers. They will probably not, come as much to the normal info sessions. And what I've also found is that the caregivers of vulnerable population are so overwhelmed with the stuff that they're already doing that they might not come. Now I'm probably painting with a broad brush here, but my big question is, how do we reach that segment of the population, or the segment that has lived experience with it? Now, I do have that, and probably others do too. But is there any way of making sure that we include members of the vulnerable population early on, so that we don't design the village sort of without having them in mind?
Kim, are you?
Oh, I was
Answer.
waiting for one of y'all to answer. I mean, my first answer would be, without from the village perspective, without that, is that it's going to be tough, because if you're trying to reach somebody who already has a cognitive impairment and may not respond, then absolutely that's going to be a hard thing. And I would be interested in hearing what other people have done or tried, or have they addressed that?
We've reached out to, well, we send out our regular newsletter that has events, and then we tend to, if we don't get response, we tend to make phone calls, personal phone calls to our members that we know has someone of a vulnerable population in that household. And that's been really helpful for us. Sometimes they've completely missed the notification, like you were saying, Tom. They weren't, they didn't pick up on it in the newsletter or something else. So it helps to just reach out. We have I say it's small. It's about 280 members and about 300 volunteers. So, but we do make some phone calls to help.
I don't want to cut off any further discussion on that, but we have 2 minutes left, and Vanessa has had her hand up forever.
Thank you. And I was also intrigued with, start there with the question that was just raised, because it is a hard question to answer. I was not here when our village started. We are 10 years old. And I think with time, many of the people that are coming to us asking for services, I'm the director of volunteers here. So many of the people that are coming to become members are asking for the rights. They are more and more the vulnerable people. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them are the vulnerable people who are coming now, but we're not at the beginning. So it's a different viewpoint. The reason I raised my hand was the question about what the villages are doing for people in this, who have dementia. And we have been skirting the issue for all 10 years. I've been involved 9 of the 10 years. First year as a volunteer, then I sort of came on staff. But we just literally a month or 2 ago had a focus group. We did it via Zoom of caregivers. Some of them were members of the village, some of them were not. But what they came up with, what they would like, and we're hoping to start, is some sort of group for them. It's not really going to be a support group because they have support groups, but it'll be a way for them to share resources, a way for them to just connect. And it's at the really beginning stages. In fact, I don't know if you saw, someone was walking in and out of the place where I am, and she actually led the focus group. So I turned you guys off and said, I'm talking about dementia with the villages, but it is something that we are beginning to address now, because it is happening more and more. The other thing, and I promise I'll end after this, is I'm always intrigued. My training is social work. I have a master's in social work that I got in the 80s. And at that point, Alzheimer's was only what they now term early onset. Everything else was called dementia of a sort. So when people talk about dementia, I oftentimes will say, I'll change it, or Alzheimer's, excuse me. I'll say cognitive issues. I'll say, so Kim, your slide of the different types is so important, because so often when people talk dementia, they immediately say Alzheimer's, and it truly is not.
Yep, great point. It's 2:01. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to pass this back to Barbara, and keep your eye out for what VTVN is doing for dementia services in the near future.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. Bill, Kim, and I have talked about little micro-learning sessions throughout the year next year. Stay tuned. Our board is meeting tomorrow. And we have a lot of great ideas moving forward to try to help educate our villages, especially in the vulnerable, village members. So I appreciate all your time, and hope you all have a very happy and healthy holiday. And we will see you in January.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for doing this. It's a great
Thanks,
session.
Kim.
You're welcome. I'll do this any day, anytime for anybody.